Have you ever been involved in a motor vehicle accident? Maybe a fender bender, or perhaps something a little bit more serious that caused you to have to write off your vehicle? Friends, family, and perfect strangers, welcome to my channel, The Bounce Back. Let me preface by saying, I truly hope that if you've been involved in an accident, that you have been able to recover from that, whether it has been financially, emotionally, or physically. I know that sometimes, we have these unexpected events in life and we don't know what to do with them. Now, today I want to share with you how a motor vehicle accident a few years ago changed the trajectory of my life in a way that I never expected. Let me go back to the day when this actually happened. It was a warm summer day. I was actually giving driving lessons to my 16-year-old at the time. I remember I was sitting in the front passenger seat, shifted sideways, making sure Mama Bear was watching her little cub, doing all the right things. She was preparing for her upcoming driver's test. In the back seat was my oldest daughter and her new baby. We came to a traffic stop. She did all the right things. We encouraged her to stop ahead of time, keep holding on to the steering wheel, just do all the things that she was going to have to do during her driver's test. She did just that. Hands on the wheel, eyes on the lights, full stop behind the white line. Check, check, check. When all of a sudden, bang, from behind us. A distracted truck driver had actually not noticed that the light had turned red while he was on his cell phone, and he rear-ended us. The force was so impactful that it actually brought the trunk all the way to the back seat. Now, in that moment, my granddaughter's car seat snapped in half. Thankfully, she didn't suffer any injuries or physical injuries. And thankfully, my oldest daughter also didn't suffer any physical injuries. As for myself and my young cub who was driving, we didn't suffer any physical injuries either. But the impact sure took us for a spin. It would be until the medics got there when my young daughter actually let go of the steering wheel. She was so freaked out by this impact that she wouldn't let go of the steering wheel. She would not get out of the car. Now listen, I went into Mama Bear mode and I got out of my car once I knew my girls were okay, and I just went to town on this driver. I couldn't believe how reckless he was. I couldn't believe how he would endanger our lives because of a cell phone call. Look, today we see way too many people on their cell phones, and I'm not here to talk about people on their cell phones, but I'm here to tell you that that one decision this driver made impacted my life deeply. The car was taken to a shop, and essentially they said it had to be written off. There was no way that they could fix that. As it turns out, I continued to work. You see, at the time, I was the main breadwinner in our household, and I had a job that had a lot of demand on me. So I would constantly work 16-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts to 16-hour shifts. Sometimes I worked 7 days, 21 days straight. So I was really carrying a whole household, and I didn't have the luxury of just not working to go and take care of some physical ailments. And I'll be honest with you, initially the pain that I was experiencing was stiffness, and my neck was stiff, my back was stiff, I was having difficulty with this or that, but it wasn't something that I could honestly say it would require me to take time off work. I did, however, start going to physiotherapy immediately and massage therapy. And shortly after I started my therapies, I started to notice more of the impact physically. And so the more I started to notice the impact physically, the more that I started struggling with my sleep patterns. And, I still continued to work. And it would be about a year from the date of the accident when things just kind of went awry for me on account of this accident. I had come home from an overnight shift and I went to sleep as I normally did. And on this particular day, when I woke up, I was unable to move. I think my body had reached a point where it just said to me, no more to slow down and you need to rest. As I said, my sleep patterns had started to sort of become very erratic now. I wasn't sleeping very much. I was working shift work, so it meant that, I was continuously changing my sleep patterns as well, and it wasn't conducive to my healing. The first way that I noticed that this accident actually impacted me was financially. I lost my laptop that was in the trunk. My daughter had lost her laptop, and there was a few things that needed to be accounted for. And of course, then I had to buy another vehicle. I found myself at that 1 year mark when I actually couldn't get up. My body had given up on me. I had to stop working. And I just sort of lost interest in anything that had to do with any level of responsibility. What I did know is that I started to become a little bit more reclusive, and then I started to see that the second way in which this impact actually impacted me was that I no longer had mobility, and not having mobility meant I had to depend on others to help me up, to help me for simple things like using the restroom. And not to say that I didn't try. I tried to get up, but the pain was so excruciating, and it felt like it was from head to toe, that I was just having a terrible time being able to cope. Number 3 was, of course, loss of wages and my loss of that financial stability that I was accustomed to having. As I said, I was the one that paid the bills. I was the one that was maintaining our household and divvying up monies and figuring out what goes where. And now I'm finding that I am getting a minimal paycheck, and unfortunately, hindsight is 2020. I didn't have a lot of savings back then. And this accident sort of shifted me out of that way of life that I was accustomed to having. And then slowly I started to see that the fourth impact was on my relationships. As I became more uncomfortable with my body and where I was at and physically how I was feeling, I was less approachable by my family. I was less approachable by my husband. I found myself in a constant state of depression. I had resorted to sleeping my days away in my state of depression, which I didn't recognize it to be that at the time. And I definitely, created this distance in my marriage. My marriage was already on the rocks. My marriage wasn't solid. We were already having issues in our relationship. So this was sort of like the icing on the cake. We parted ways. It wasn't an easy transition. There was things that happened in between. But it was over. And I found that, I was constantly in a state of anger, and it wasn't towards my children and it wasn't towards anyone in particular, but I had sort of become disappointed with life. And I found that now the fifth way in which this accident impacted my life was my mental health. As I stayed in bed more, and as I stayed away from work, and as I gave in to the pain, what I started to realize is that this was the most devastating loss for me, which was my mental health. And I started to realize that I had somehow, through this motor vehicle accident, opened Pandora's box. Now, there were trauma events that were so deeply rooted within me that I hadn't dealt with. And this accident sort of just inadvertently opened that into something that I had to deal with. And so my CPTSD, which is my childhood post-traumatic stress disorder, kicked into full gear. And everything just started flooding, and there was a lot of stuff that I was experiencing, feelings that I was now feeling, flashbacks that I was experiencing, and I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand what was the connection between my car accident and my past. Well, I later came to understand that studies have shown that people that have suppressed memories, they sometimes, when they're involved in accidents or other traumatic events, it causes those experiences to sort of come to surface, especially if you haven't dealt with the trauma that's behind it. But this car accident forced me to deal with it. I was sitting down on the side of the bed, and I had opened all my bottles of pain medication and so forth. And I sat there, and I don't think that I was thinking it through, but I was just sitting there trying to muster the courage to take all these medications. And I have to say, something really interesting happened while I was sitting there in this state. I felt a hand in my back, sort of like scratching at me. And I swear it was my mother. I mean, I remember my mom always, sitting me around her. Like, even as an adult, she would like scratch my head or scratch my back whenever I was around her. And I could swear that in that moment, my mom was present, her spirit was there, and she scratched my back almost as if to say, "What are you doing? Like, you can't do this." And I sort of snapped out of this, state that I was in, and I said, "Whoa, like, what am I doing? This is crazy." But that wasn't the last time that thought actually came up for me. And that same year, around the end of the year, I actually, I had called my husband. I had said to him that I wanted to talk to him and I wanted to see him. And I was feeling a lot of different emotions, around our marriage and around knowing that he had somebody else in his life. And just there was a lot of stuff happening, and, all the losses that I felt that I was having at that moment, within my relationship and my job, and not feeling well and feeling all these emotions that I didn't know where they were coming from. And I asked him to meet with me, and I remember that he reluctantly said yes. And we went to a park. He wanted it to be a public space. And I took a coffee with me and 2 bottles of medication. One of them was a bottle of painkillers, and another was a bottle of sleeping pills. And I very casually was walking and talking with him, and I opened each bottle, and I pretty well just chugged a whole bottle of painkillers. And then when I was taking the second bottle of sleeping pills, then he realized that I was doing something, and I passed out. And next thing you know, the ambulance had come for me, and they had resuscitated me there. And then a few days later, they had to resuscitate me again because apparently I was going into some sort of shock. When I think back, I think it was such a small accident, but it created so much chaos over a number of years for me. And for me to get to that point of wanting to end my life, but really and truly not even knowing that I even thought about it. Like, I truly do not remember having put thought into it and saying, this is what my intentions are. It just sort of happened. I'm so grateful that I wasn't able to succeed taking my life, honestly, because what happened afterwards, what happened after that whole chaotic period. And now I'm not going to tell you that, once I came out of the hospital, life sort of turned around and it was all better. It wasn't. It would actually be a few more years of doing nothing but spiraling into a very dark place in my life. And then I had a moment where I sat and I have to tell you this. I was sitting on the toilet, and I remember looking up at the sky and going, I don't know how to do this without you. Like, just lead the way, just lead the way, just show me what I need to be doing. If I never recover, if I never regain anything that I ever had before, then so be it. Just let me serve you. Let me be a catalyst for change, for others. Just help me change whatever is happening to me right now. And I truly believe that when we put things out to the universe, and when we put things out there with so much faith, that they do come to fruition. And it was almost, sometimes I think of it from a biblical standpoint, what I have read in the Bible. I'm not a religious person per se, but I am a believer that there is a greater power. But it almost felt like the sea had parted for me. There was an opening, there was a window for me to be able to regain my footing, to recapture my old life. But you know what? I didn't recapture my old life. I created a new life. My bounce back My comeback was so significant. And it took me sitting on the toilet and say, Lord, if you're there, if I mean anything to you whatsoever, just lead the way. Just lead the way. Do what you will with me, but let this be the time that I change. And it would be from then on that seed was there. And I remember getting an apartment and being able to furnish it and just walking a different path. And then, of course, the enemy was on the background going, no, 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 Gloria, you can't recover this. You are supposed to destroy yourself. It feels like the enemy was always wanting to see me fail. And did I fall? Many times afterwards. Did I get up? Absolutely, because what I remembered was that when I asked that greater power with so much faith and so much conviction to get me back on my feet, it did. The things that I saw manifest in my life from then on have been incredible. Now, I lost my home. I lost my finances. I lost all my resources. I lost everything. And I remember saying to myself a few years back, I will never recover from any of that. It seems so distant. It seems like I will never get back there again. And I started working on myself, and I started creating programs, and I started, becoming that person that speaks her truth. In fact, I developed a program called Girl, Speak Your Truth. And I even went to Colombia and spoke about this. And I met women in the Dominican Republic and spoke about this. And it was about the whole idea of learning to coexist with our trauma. That speaking our truth doesn't have to be ugly. And speaking our truth is what sets us free. And this is what had happened with that accident, is that I had to learn to speak my truth. And I had to learn to really acknowledge that I had been through some heavy stuff in my childhood, that I had been through some experiences that were very painful and that had marked me in such a way that I could do nothing about today, except that I learned to coexist with it. I learned to place my trauma in a metaphorical box. I learned to put it all in there and to say to myself, I will deal with you when I can, when I want to, or maybe never. But now I control the narrative. Now I controlled when, how, and why. And so when I started sort of like creating these programs, I started to really believe my path, my walk was to help others. And that accident was just the catalyst to help me bring it to fruition. I could have done with a lot of the in-betweens, I must say. But you know what? If I had to relive it again, and that was what the calling was, I would relive it again. Because what I do know is that I came out of there a stronger person, a better person, a more conscientious person, someone that values what she has in front of her. Today, I live a life full of gratitude, even for all those difficult experiences, even for the car accident, even for the ugly cars that I've had to have after that. But I live in gratitude, and I live with internal peace, and I live in a state of knowing how to coexist with my trauma, and I give it a place, and I give it a name, but I dictate the narrative. Now, my friends, if this resonates with you, I hope that what I've been able to instill in you is that if you want it bad enough, just ask the universe. It will respond. Make sure you're listening. I want to thank you for being here today. I hope that you will like, subscribe, and definitely comment below. Let me know what you think about this. I hope to see you here again. I hope to hear from you, to get the feedback from you. Until next time, my friends, thank you for being here. I am Gloria, and this is My Bounce Back. Take care, everybody.